Good morning, everyone. Hi, welcome. It is Wednesday. It's Wednesday. This is going to be a bit of a sprint. I only have about an hour and 45 minutes right now before my next commitment today, so I want to make the most of it. I want to make the most of it with you. I'm so glad you're here. The agenda here is I'm going to talk a little bit about what I'm working on right now. I'm going to read a little itty bitty excerpt of poetry from this book, Tales from Ovid by Ted Hughes, the adaptation of Ovid's Metamorphoses, to get some good language in the air. And then what I'm going to do for myself, at least, is I am going to read another another William Faulkner story. William Faulkner, American Southern writer, extremely lyrical, extremely language forward. I read a story of his yesterday. So this story that I'm working on right now, it's tentatively titled Runaway Story. And it takes place in the woods. It's not so much in the South per se, but there's still this like spirit of deep woods, dark, emotional, visceral type material. And while I was working on it yesterday, from nowhere, William Faulkner entered my mind, a writer who I have not thought of in a long time. Someone on the Discord, Fernando, brought up a really great Faulkner story, A Rose for Emily, which I had read a few years ago when I was looking for second-person POV references. But outside of that, I hadn't really thought about William Faulkner in a minute. So what did I do yesterday? I stopped what I was doing. I found a Faulkner story, and I said, okay, let's be with Faulkner for a hot second here, since this feels like a cousin story to what I'm trying to do, and let's spend some time there. I'm just going to check my microphone. I constantly am doing something wrong, so I'm glad you're here. I think you can hear me. In any event, so that's what happened yesterday, is that I read this story, Dry September. It almost brought me to tears. It confirmed that I need to be reading Faulkner right now, that I have nothing to lose by reading more of his short stories. I didn't fully remember that he had a reputation as a bit of a short story writer. So this is all one of those great moments where you're just playing cards and you get dealt a bad hand and a bad hand and a bad hand, and all of a sudden you got two aces and you're like, whew, it's on. This hand is on. Not that I've been being dealt bad cards in my recent reading diet, but it's like, whew, feel it now. Feel on to a vein in the mine that I want to pursue. So before I start writing this morning, that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to read another one of his short stories. The story I'm going to read, if you want to read along, is called Barn Burning. This is from 1938. And that'll take me roughly half an hour or so, probably, and then I will report back about this story. And then the back end of this stream this morning, I want to actually get some writing done. It's a tight morning, so I'm going to try to manage my expectations, and I think once I finish the story, I'll be able to report a better sense of exactly what I want to achieve in my story, Runaway Story, this morning. But before we start, a little bit of poetry. I like to do this because I've really come to appreciate the value of having highly precise language in your writing. Part of November for me is the Bradbury Challenge, the Ray Bradbury Challenge, where I'm trying to read one poem a day, one short story a day, and one essay a day. So this is also part of that. I'm just going to read a couple stanzas. We're still in part one of the Tales of Ovid. This is about the beginning of the world. And this is translated from the Latin back in the day. God, or some such artist as resourceful, began to sort it out. Land here, sky there, and sea there. Up there, the heavenly stratosphere. Down here, the cloudy, the windy. He gave to each its place, independent, gazing about freshly. Also resonating, each one a harmonic of the others, just like the strings that would resound one day in the dome of the tortoise. The fiery aspiration that makes heaven took it to the top. The air, happy to be idle, lay between that and the earth, which rested at the bottom, engorged with heavy metals, embraced by delicate waters. So good, right? So good. I am a Ted Hughes fan. A problematic person to be a fan of, but I like his poetry. I do. Okay, so I am going to put on a timer. Let me know in the chat if you're here, what you're working on. Good morning. I'm grateful for you. I'm excited to be working with you all. Just to engage. Love that story. Mike sounds good. Hi, going to read it right now. Hey, Kashiki, am scared of Faulkner, aren't we all? Hi, Sarah. Eventually, you'll be reading the Masters. Sarah reads a lot of Masters, so I am curious about this fear of Faulkner. But yeah, there's a greatness there that definitely is intimidating. But, you know, that's what we're here for, right? Hi, 51 Tesla. Welcome. Everyone, have a great reading, writing, creating morning, and I will check back in after I have finished this story, Barn Burning by William Faulkner, and we can chat. Yeah, if anyone else wants to read it right now, let's jam. Hey, everybody. If you're rocking and rolling, if you're writing and the words are coming, hit mute, keep going. That's my promise to y'all every time. Okay, so this is a long story and it's dense and I'm trying to enjoy it and fully engage with it and understand all of it. So I'm only sort of 40% in on this story. And because I have so little time today to work in my writing life, I'm going to hit pause, which I'm reluctant to do because I love reading a short story in one sitting. That's partly what makes them so special. But I think I need to because I gotta finish stories. Part of the Ray Bradbury way of writing life is to write one short story a week. He famously said that if you write a short story a week for 52 weeks, there's guaranteed to be some good ones. And I, at the very least, am trying to kind of hit that mark. My goal this week is to submit Under the Pear Tree and to finish a first draft of this story that I'm working on now, the Runaway Story. I struck gold with this story, y'all. I chose this story solely based on the title, which is called Barn Burning, which I was like, that sounds cool. This story is told through the point of view of a young boy, like my story. This story is about a young boy's relationship to his abusive father, like my story. And there's just so many parallels here. And it's particularly exciting because when I read yesterday's story, Dry September, I was struck by the way in which Faulkner omitted the most visceral violence. I'm going to be talking about physical violence here. You can press mute if that's something that upsets you or that you don't want to listen to today. But in the story yesterday, Dry September, there's a murder that happens, a violent murder, but Faulkner doesn't show us that scene. That scene is alluded to, but it's omitted. It's elided. We have a scene before and we have a scene after, and people are talking about what's going to happen and what happened, but we never see the murder. We never get that vivid, visceral, lurid description. And since my story is also about abuse and there's physical abuse, when I read that story yesterday, excuse me, I thought to myself, oh, maybe I should omit the actual acts of violence, because the way Faulkner did that in Dry September, it really worked and had this amazing, evocative, suggestive, imaginative quality. You got to imagine what happened, and that was so cool. But in my first draft of this story, Runaway Story, there is explicit moments where the abuse is described and discussed, and lo and behold, Faulkner in this story does explicitly describe it. So I am having this moment right now where I'm reading two knockout stories, two bangers, and they're both in conversation with the story that I'm trying to tell. And all of a sudden now I feel even more empowered and confident about the first draft that I've written. So I just want to put a passage up here on the screen here and share this description of some physical violence. This isn't crazy vivid or anything, but I will read it out loud, and it does describe a scene of physical abuse. So I'm going to pull that up right now and read it to y'all. I hope. Is anyone else out there reading this story, by the way? That would be cool. Of course, I don't expect that, but throwing it out there. Okay, cool. So this is, what happens here is this story opens with, in a trial. And essentially this family is kind of a family of derelicts that goes from town to town, taking advantage of people getting kicked out. And this is exactly what has happened again in this trial, where the judge says, you need to get out of here. And there was this moment in the trial where this boy who's 10 was gonna appear and potentially throw under the bus his own family. What ends up happening is, while they don't have proof, the judge and the plaintiff that this family did the bad stuff. They pretty much know what happened. So the judge is like, look, I can't prove anything, but you need to get the heck out of here. And there was this moment where the kid might have spilled the beans. So now it's like the next day, and the dad confronts his son. You were fixing to tell them. You would have told him. He didn't answer. His father struck him with the flat of his hand on the side of the head, hard but without heat, exactly as he had struck the 2 mules at the store, exactly as he would strike either of them with any stick in order to kill a horsefly. His voice still, without heat or anger. You're getting to be a man. You got to learn. You got to learn to stick to your own blood, or you ain't going to have any blood to stick to. Do you think either of them, any man there this morning, would? Don't you know all they wanted was a chance to get at me because they knew I had them beat, eh? Later, 20 years later, he was to tell himself, if I had said they wanted only truth, justice, he would have hit me again. But now he said nothing. He was not crying. He just stood there. Answer me, his father said. Yes, he whispered. His father turned. Get on to bed. We'll be there tomorrow. So this is this moment where there's actual abuse, right? Where the dad hits his kid. This is told through the kid's point of view. Throughout the story, this boy is like scared of his dad. Anyway, this is really a gold mine because this really has to do what my story is about. So I just feel so fortunate right now and so excited to continue reading this story. But also, as I said, I gotta get down to business here. It's 10:06 my time. I only have about an hour left. So what I'm going to do now is transition into my own story, work on that for about an hour, and then report back. So I hope everyone is having a great session. Mateo Leon Rodriguez, author, says that's rough. Sarah Ray Warner says, have it pulled up and haven't read it yet. Sarah, these stories are so good. We got to talk about these stories. Quick pitch, quick plug. Sarah and I tomorrow, 3 p.m. EST, are discussing Sticks for our horror story club, which the author is Carl. Oh, shoot. I'm not going to have it fast enough to make it on this. I'll put it in the comments. Anyway, if you want to be a part of the story club, we will be here at 3 p.m. tomorrow, 3 p.m. EST, chatting. Okay, rock and roll. I'm going to take a little mini break for myself here, and then I'll be back, and I'll put on the clock, and we can see what kind of progress we can make here over the next hour. I hope everyone is making progress. Un abrazo. Good luck. Suerte. Hey, everybody. Hey, everybody. So, if you're in the zone, please keep going. Press mute. Keep working. Keep writing. I hope that that's the case for you. If you want to hear how I'm doing, this is how progress is going. Right now, I am working on a short story called Runaway Story. And where I'm at with this story right now is I'm riding the wave of a couple William Faulkner short stories that I've just read, specifically in their treatment of abuse. So this particular story that I'm working on right now has to do with abuse. Consider this a content warning at this point in the stream. And one thing that I've been really trying to figure out is how much to show, how much of the actual violence to share, to show, to render in the story. And so what I did in that last writing session is I went back specifically to the part where the violence is enacted in the Faulkner story. I read that there at the last break, and I went to my part of the story when the violence happened. And I want to share that passage in a little bit. Another little kind of technical structure issue that I'm running into that I want to share is, one question that I think is always so important is kind of the why now question. Why is this story being told now? What is special about this particular moment in this character's life? And I think that's particularly important in the short story form. And in each case here, we have both the Faulkner story and the story that I'm working on, we have a young person. This is kind of a coming of age moment. This is kind of a before and after moment. And I pinpointed where that happens in the Faulkner story. So I want to share that here. Let me just clean up the feed a little bit. So this is just this like really small moment in the Faulkner story where it is made clear that something is happening different than normal. So in the Faulkner story, abuse is part of this kid's life. However, I'm going to read this passage. The father and son are being referred to here. They went back up the road a week ago, or before last night, that is. He would have asked where they were going, but not now. His father had struck him before last night, but never before had he paused afterward to explain why. So here we are in this story where it's like abuse is the norm, but this is different, where there's this like degree of, instead of just this is a dad who hits his kid, it's like this is a dad who hits his kid and drives home a message along with the violence. And so that is like the why now in the Faulkner story. That is like why this story is being told, because this is not business as usual. The kid's not just getting hit. There's something different here. In my story, what happens is that this kid is in this home that is not pretty. There's verbal abuse left and right. But until the moment of this story, there has not been physical abuse. So the question is like, why is this triggering it? Because what's happening in my story is that the kid is doing something they do often, which is run away. But this instance, the dad decides to physically assault his kid. And so one thing I was working on during that rewrite, it was trying to kind of identify justification for that or explanation, or like why now? Why is this happening now? And what I found myself going through is like finding solutions, but they're all kind of they're all kind of, if not expected, then like familiar. And so I think this is where I'm at in my writing, is that I think I can come up with plausible, viable, convincing, serviceable solutions to justify a plot point, but I don't think they're as true as they can be. And so I think one particular moment that I'm going to continue working on as I continue this story is finding a really true justification to this character to beat his kid for the first time. And I just think that's going to take some deeper listening, some deeper exploration into this character. So anyway, that was part of the problem solving that happened during that past session. And what I also want to share just for fun here is the scene where we first see the abuse. So let me just pull that up. So this is just an excerpt for the story. I just wanted to share. So I'll read this to you. My story is told in the first person from the point of view of the kid. I got to milepost 283 finally and was about to get off the highway, but then the Ram Charger pulled up beside me, and my dad got out of the car, and my brother stayed in the car. And my dad ran over to me, and he grabbed me, and he'd never grabbed me. And so, well, I'll just say I started to cry because he'd never grabbed me before. And my brother didn't move, stopped moving, I should say. Not that he'd been moving, but he froze now, like a spell in a movie, watching. And right then and there on the side of the road, Dad took off his belt, started hitting me all over my back and all over my butt, and I screamed and cried, and someone pulled over and asked what the hell he was doing and told him if he didn't stop, he'd call the cops. And then they called the cops. And the man tried to intervene, but my dad screamed at him. I was on the ground now, and I couldn't tell what my dad said, but the man went away and drove off. And my dad knelt down beside me and told me I was old enough now. No more bullshit anymore. So that's the moment of violence. It's vivid. It's not omitted, unlike Dry September, where the terrible violence is omitted. This feels good. This feels right. This feels vivid. I like the voice here. But again, the technical structural problem is why? What was it about this particular runaway? So that's where things are at. I have to finish writing for the day, unfortunately. The rest of life beckons with its various responsibilities. I hope this was a productive session for you. Thank you for being here. If it's your first time catching me, my name's Asa Merritt. I write short fiction, learning the art and craft of short fiction in community with other writers here on YouTube. There's a Discord server that my friend Sarah and I manage, and there's lots of good stuff happening there. You're welcome to join. Have a good day, everybody.